What's going on, Military Cashflow family? How are you doing today, Mike?
I am blessed. I told you about all the struggles I have going on financially, man. But having a conversation like today, and we're going to talk about today's guest, and he's no stranger, but it always helps just to be able to talk at a higher level. Now, we always love giving value to whoever we can when we talk about just investing in financial strategies, but we rarely talk about our own personal struggles. You know what I mean? And so having a guest on that can understand our struggles, it always just it's refreshing. It's refreshing to vent sometimes, especially as men, because we don't do that shit. We swallow our pride too much, man. It's true. But no, man, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, man. I'm about to head out to Jacksonville here in a second, right after this interview, actually, and my niece's birthday. So we should have some fun. We're going skating, so really excited about that. Yeah. So
you get your ATL on, okay? Let me find out. You used to be at the skate rink as a kid, man.
Let me find out. I know that's pretty big in Fayetteville, isn't it? I've heard that's like pretty big up there, right?
It is. It actually surprisingly is. They treat it just like it's like the. What is it? It was ATL?
Yeah.
What was that movie? But anyway,
it was ATL. You're right. It's ATL.
It was, yeah. It was. Yeah. They treat it just like that over there, man.
That's cool.
I can't skate. I was never invited.
Other than that, man, I gotta lose a couple pounds, man. I'm gonna do this combatives tournament, dude, like next week. Nice. So you might see me with a black eye or something like that coming on podcast like next week. So I'm gonna try to get back the title. For you guys who don't know, brushing my shoulders off a little bit, I am a 3-time 3ID combatives champion, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to go for that fourth, you know what I mean? So
how long has it been? How long has it been since the last time you competed?
Since I was here the last time, since I was at Fort Stewart the last time. So there was no competitions at Fort Drum, so I didn't do anything up there. I did,
right.
I rolled a little bit, but I didn't really do too much as far as competing. The last time I competed was, I'd say 2017. That was the last time. So I think I won 2017, 2016, and 2015, or maybe it was 16, 15, and 14. Right. Those 3 years that I competed. And then prior to that, I used to actually, do MMA. Actually, I had a professional fight. I lost, but it's all good. I did that thing. Eventually, maybe one day I'll get back into it, but it just scratches the itch a little bit for me. That's about it. So today, exactly, scratching the itch. That's perfect for today's guest. We talked with David Prey, and Mike mentioned we're talking a little bit higher level stuff. So this is more of a conversation because, as you guys know, we typically are interviewing people who have started in their journey or are kind of in the process of their journey, those beginning phases. Sometimes they're in the middle phases, right? But I believe at this point, David Prey, Military to Millionaire, he is in the position where most people would consider that like the end state for their investing strategy, the end state of their journey. He's there right now. Now, that is not the end state for him, but still being at that level, right? And starting to systemize his business to where he's hiring different people. He's out of the military now, right? So, and he's in the reserves, and we talk about a little bit about that as well, but he's out of the military. He's grown to a level of like over 100 doors. He's got a couple of assistants. He also has, wholesale operations / a few other operations as well. So he's at that level, and he's out of the military, and he's doing this full time now, right? So for a lot of people, for a lot of our listeners, that's probably where you want to end up being once you get out of the military, right? Like, let's say you do 20 years and you get out of the military. That's typically around where you want to be at, right? So getting some insight from like his perspective at that level, I think is a lot different than what we normally get. And I think it's we dive into a lot of topics. Mike?
Yeah, and we follow Dave in his whole journey. Obviously, most of you guys do too. But I tell you what, even after the interview was done recording, he was like, you know what? Even my followers don't hear this story. So you guys get it here, the exclusive, baby. But no, seriously, when he talks about the mental challenges, and this is something that obviously you guys know I'm very passionate about in a sense. He talks about the mental challenges of why he ultimately decided to leave the military active duty, because he was in that little limbo space. And then even some of the challenges that he faces in the reserve, which, for most of us, we're saying, we'll just leave once we make enough money. But there are some real concerns there. And he actually opens up, and he's a little bit more vulnerable here. So again, Thank you for that, Dave. And hopefully you guys get a lot of value out of this. Before we go right into it, last thing I'm going to force Dan, I'm going to put you on the spot right here. You got to take video of the fight, man, and you got to record it. All right. You got to record it and put it on the channel. Now that he's challenged, everybody can hold him to it. But without further ado, let's get to the episode.
What's going on, Military Cashflow family? Today, we got a military real estate legend in the house in David Pere, military to millionaire. So welcome to the show, Dave. Appreciate you coming on, man. Can you let our audience know a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing in the real estate space?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, gents. Who I am. I'm Dave. I just left the Marine Corps after 13 years active service last month. I'm in the reserves now. In 2015, I got into real estate, and then I just kind of kept buying real estate. And then somewhere along the line, I think mid 2018, I was like, well, let me document what I'm learning. And that kind of grew into the military millionaire community, which is kind of crazy how big that's gotten over the last couple of years. And so when I left the Marine Corps, I decided to take it all full time. So I basically, at this point, I'm a full-time entrepreneur / real estate investor / I don't really know what you'd call me. I just don't have a job, and I'm not, starving. So I guess it's good.
Yeah, it is good, man. And this is going to be a very interesting episode. You've already been on before with us, and so our audience can always go back and really get that baseline information. But I know we really wanted you on here because we want to talk about the progression, right? We want to talk about some of the thought patterns as you kind of progress through this, and now technically full time, right? You've been able to set aside everything else along the way. So give us just a quick brief. What does your real estate holdings look like right now? And what does your platform audience look like as far as number of subscribers, number of video content, and things of that nature?
Yeah. So across all platforms, we're probably sitting around 120,000. So we got like just under 50 on Instagram, and then like 26, 27 on Facebook, 22-ish on TikTok, which just kind of happened out of nowhere. And then like 17, almost 18,000 on YouTube. And growing, right? So, and I haven't been focusing on content as much over the last couple of months as I should. So it's all kind of slowed down a little bit, which is actually really dumb on my end, but it is what it is.
Yep.
And then real estate, well, as far as what I consider my buy and holds, we're sitting at about 102 doors. So a 40-unit hotel, 3 small apartments, and then a bunch of like single family duplex, 4-plex properties, probably about 4.5 million worth of real estate. And then a couple other, it's kind of a weird answer because I'm doing a lot of active like off-market deal finding. Like I hired an acquisitions guy, and so I'm doing a lot of off-market deal stuff and like some wholesaling and some flipping. So I've got like, I say 102, but I actually have like 3 other single families that I own right now that are just like, one had a fire, one's like weird situations that I'm like, one of these I'm going to sell, one of these I'm going to flip, one of these I'm going to rent. And so it's kind of done like 6 deals in the last month, and it's kind of like hodgepodge stuff that I don't really know where it falls into the portfolio yet. So, and about a random piece of raw land that I thought I had a buyer for, and then he isn't. So now I'm, I guess, a landowner.
So what with that land though, was it just meant to be a wholesale, or did you have like ever intents for farming it or whatever? Subleasing?
Oh no, it's like a 1/4 acre commercial zoned piece of land that I was basically going to sell to the guy who owns the property next door, so he'd have more parking. And then he's just kind of like been out of state, so I don't know if he's like ghosted or if he's just like on vacation. And so I bought it for 85, and I was 8,500, and I was going to sell it to him for like 22 cash or 30,000 seller financed. So I'm gonna give him like another week, and then I'll probably just offload it because I don't really care to have said piece of land, even though I got it cheap enough that it's, it's probably worth about 22 right now. So that's a good little deal. But all that being said, I've got some weird things going on in the portfolio as far as like, I say 102 doors, but then there's like all this random crap that I'm like, I don't really know where I count that in the portfolio, but it's there, So my board has 8 things that are either under contract or being sold, or so.
Just a mix.
You know how the game goes.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Absolutely. I love it. And the reason why we really wanted to highlight and kind of start the podcast in that fashion, like, hey, where you're at right now, because if you go back and listen to the other episodes, you kind of see some of that transition, right? And I think you've been on the show a couple times actually, because I think we originally got you on back at Grant Cardone's in 2019. What was
I
it
think
called?
that was
10X. Yeah, the
I was
10X
I think that was
conference, right?
before it was Military Cashflow, right?
Yeah, it was
Yep.
back when it was Financial Freedom Journal. Yep.
Yep.
And now, obviously, everybody's kind of continued to grow, right? So now we're at the Military Cashflow, right? So,
Yeah.
I love the transition. Again, if you go back and listen to that old episode, and then come back and listen to this and see where that progression's at. So let's talk some of that progression, right? So the last episode, I think we had you on. You were talking about being stuck in the skiff. And like, yeah, at the time, I want to say you weren't sure if you were going to stick it out or not, or you're going to stay in, right? So between that and now, like, where is the mindset? What are some of the key things that happen? Speak to our service members, man, that might be going through a similar situation.
Well, the biggest thing for me was that the Marine Corps wasn't scratching the itch anymore. So the things that I found fulfillment in weren't like just putting on the uniform and going to work. It was, like deployment and combat training. And like I was not a combat arms MOS, but I joined at the right time. And so my first 4 years, I got to do like pre-scout sniper school, infantry machine gun leaders. I was a lead vehicle on a security detachment, driving around with mine roller in Afghanistan. So like I was having fun. It was adventurous. It was exciting. It was sometimes miserable and dangerous and whatever, right? Have a lot of interesting stories, but like I loved that enough that I actually tried out for MARSOC, like our special forces. I blew out my knee. I didn't make it, I DOR'd, whatever. But and then I ended up on recruiting duty, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to get back to the fleet. And I got back to the fleet, and I was like, wow, everything that was fun is stopped. And now I'm promoted. And so like the skiff was like the final culminating, like, screw you, nail in the coffin, because it was like, not only are you not doing anything cool, but you aren't even going to the rifle range. Like, you are so busy, we're just going to put a waiver on the rifle range and you can just stay in the office even longer. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm hanging out with all these guys who are like retiring. And it wasn't scratching the itch. It wasn't fulfilling like what I wanted. I was volunteering for deployments. Just wasn't there. And so I was wrestling with all of that. Like, and I read the book like Wild at Heart, and I was like, I need adventure in my life. Like, something's got to give. And so then I was really leaning into like, okay, well, can I leave the military? Like, am I at a point where I can leave the military? And at that point, like, the platform kind of started to, essentially for 2018, 2019, and most of 2020, the platform was just a big red number on my spreadsheet of like income, right? It was just, I paid for this and I paid for that and I paid for this and I paid for that, and no money came back in, right? I was making a couple $100 on YouTube, but it was costing me more than that just to edit the podcasts. And it was just, for probably 2 years, it was just a big red mark of like, eventually this might make some money, but that wasn't really the intent behind the platform. And then all of a sudden it started bringing in some income. And so the real estate was already kind of cash flowing. And then the platform started the cash flow, and kind of I sat back one day and said, the cost of living in Missouri, where my rentals are, is pretty low. And my wife wants to go back there, and she wants to, actually she had already gone back, but she wants to stay there, and she likes her job. She wants to keep working her job. And I was like, honestly, I can live off her job. And as long as I'm cash flowing a little bit, I'll be okay. And so I kind of made the decision then, like, all right, I'll go reserves. Like, worst case scenario, I can go from the reserves. I can go and jump into being a recruiter for the Marine Corps, because they'll always take a prior service recruiter from, back onto recruiting from the reserves. Like, they're hurting for bodies. So they're like, yeah, I saw that firsthand when I was a recruiter, that they were always looking for a reservist to come recruit. So I was like, all right, I'll go back. If I hate it, then I can just jump back in on the recruiting side. And, at least I've been there, done that. I was good at it. And then the platform just kind of kept making more money, and the real estate kept making more money. And then I got into some off-market deals. I started doing some wholesales. I started buying some bigger deals, and I was like, yep, nope, I'm good. I'm going to be financially free. So let's wing it. Right. And now we're a month past. I'm doing IMA. So I'm doing instead of like a drill every week, like one weekend every month, I just have to check 30 days off a year for it to count as a good year. So like I'm going for my first drill November 30th to December 9th or 10th, and then I'll have to do like another 15 or 20 days sometime in 2022 in order to be good for the year. And so I'm doing my first like reserve drill next month, and we'll see how we like it. But the cool thing with the reserves is if I hate it, I can just be like, you know what, not for me, I'm done. So
this IMA thing, this is the first time I heard about this. So instead of doing the traditional 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the summer, you can consolidate all that time.
Yeah, so it's used a lot of times. It's more for like staff NCOs or officers, and it's for people who. So like a prime example is the spot I'm in. Every year we had 2 major exercises where we were like, man, I wish we had a third staff NCO, because someone always gets pulled away to do this exercise, and then there's only one person running the shop, and it's such a busy shop, it was almost impossible to run on your own. And it was like this notional exercise on both occasions. So it's like you're getting pulled away to like sit in a tent and pretend you're doing something. And so basically I was like, hey, what if you guys open up a BIC for me, and every year when those 2 exercises hit, I'll come out and I'll sit in the tent and I'll play the like, yes, if that was real, we would do that. No, if that was real, we could not do that game. And then you guys could keep running the shop. And so a lot of times what they do it is like, we had a female major who did it when I was there, and she would come out for like the once a year, like rewriting of the ops orders and stuff, planning for these events. And she would be there for like 30 days. And then that was really the only time you saw her. And as long as you keep up your like annual training and your height, weight, PFT, CFT, like you're good. So it's cool.
This is a perfect example how even in the afterworld, even in the reserves, you're still creating your own destiny or whatever. I think that's pretty amazing, because I mean, I actually spent time in the reserves in the beginning. That's how I started my military career. A lot of people aren't aware of that, but when I was searching for different ways to kind of scratch that itch, like you were talking about, I didn't even know that was a possibility. So I think that's amazing.
Cooler about it is that it's not like they call you and say, you need to be here today, at least so far. What it is it's like you work with them. So like I got a phone call last week, and my master guns was like, he's like, hey, how's civilian world? I was like, oh, it's good, blah, blah, blah. He's like, great. Hey, we got this exercise coming up. Are you available? Like, would you want to come out from November 30th to December 9th? And I was like, hang on, let me call my wife. And I called my wife, and I called him back. I was like, yeah, I can do that. He's like, okay, cool. We'll let you know what we need. I was like, sweet. But had I said no, they would have been like, oh, okay, well, when are you free? Like,
God, so a
cool.
lot of my buddies who's transitioned out said the same thing. They said the reserve component, regardless if it's guard or reserves, is the best kept secret, because it provides you with the most flexibility, but it still allows you to play military when you want to. But 2 things I wanted to ask you about this transition, because I know a lot of people go through the same concept, specifically in your position where you had already done 13, 14, 15 years. And now it's like, we're right here, right? So when you were contemplating getting out, 1, did you attempt to actually make the military continue to scratch that itch? Did you try to make it fun? And then from there, once that finally happened, was the choice of the reserves really just a safety net, or was it more of an emotional tie to the military?
That's a good question. So the first part is, I mean, I volunteered for some deployment opportunities and some different things. And then I just kind of got to a point where I was like, all right, well, like, so there's no nice way to say this without sounding like a cocky prick. Nice. So just know that this is the reality, whether you believe that I'm being an arrogant prick or not. I was too good at my job for people to let me be the one to leave the office. My last 5 or 6 fitness reports, like our promotion reports, at least 4 of them I was ranked as like the number 1 that they'd ever had. And so I can back up that statement. And like I literally got told, well, we'd love to let you go to Dubai next year, but we can't afford to let you out of the office, right? And I'm like,
that's crippling.
Well, he went to Dubai last year, and so it should be my turn, And I got told that about a couple different opportunities, and I was just like, you know what? Like, had you let me do some of this fun stuff, I might have stayed around. I don't know, because I really do like the Marine Corps. I also noticed as the platform was growing, that I was getting a lot of flack from leadership with the idea of like, how can you be focused on this when you're clearly focused on that, which made me kind of laugh, because it's like I got of the two that weren't hundreds, one of them was actually pretty bad. He'd rated me 100 twice and then dropped me significantly and told me like, well, yeah, but now you've got this whole thing going on and I can't fathom that you're really giving it your all. And I'm like, well, I took on an extra billet this reporting period that's not actually my job, and I crushed it, and I did everything else. So I'm pretty sure I'm at least doing the same, if not better. And yet that was the perception was, well, how do I know you're focused on the military if you're doing all this other stuff? Which is funny, because it's like, well, would you rather me just get drunk and play Call of Duty like all the other off Marines? Like, right. I'm doing something beneficial in my off time rather than like, so it's kind of an interesting situation. As far as the reserves go, man, I will tell you, the reserve packet was approved for no less than 40 days before I finally signed it. Because I kept the guy was bugging me. He's like, hey, you gonna get that back to me? I'm like, yeah, I think so. And I'm like talking to the wife, and I'm like, and I had told people that I was doing the reserves, and I was just staring at this packet like, do I really want to do this? And so ultimately what it came down to was like 2 or 3 things. One, if I hate it, I can leave, right? The reserves isn't like, it's a contract, but it's not like I can still leave if I'm like, wow, this is terrible. 2, the reserves was going to allow me, I didn't transfer my GI Bill the last time I reenlisted because I was just misinformed. So it would allow me to transfer my GI Bill to my kids because I'm not going to use it. And it would allow me, TRICARE for like $270 a month for the family. So like in both cases, those are really solid benefits. So those were 2 of the main reasons. And then the other reason being kind of a weird one. My platform is from military to millionaire, right? And so I kind of felt almost like I had to do the reserves, because if I just said, fuck it, I'm out, then I'm like the military millionaire dude. So like I should finish the military. And so while I know that's only like in my head that I'm going to be like, yeah, I feel better if I finished it, and finished meaning like I made it to 20. I'm kind of at a point now where like that doesn't really matter so much, but that was definitely a thing for a while. Now that I'm like doing my own thing and I've had a taste of freedom now for a couple months, man, I don't know. We'll see, right? So like we'll see what happens when I go back. But like I had to put on the uniform when I picked up my DD-214, and I had like the day prior, I had to redo my final physical because someone lost it. I had to do a dental exam again. I had to do something else, and then someone lost like my outbound interview with the CO. And so I had to like redo it, but the CO was gone. So I was going to do it with the XO, and the XO is like the lieutenant and a first lieutenant. So like he's been around a little bit, but not a ton. And he made me wait like 45 minutes telling me, yeah, just a few more minutes, whatever. And then finally it was 16:30 on the dot. He's like, hey, I'm sorry. Can you come back tomorrow? And so I was like, great, 7:30. He's like, yeah, 7:30. I was like, okay. So I showed up at like 7:15. He didn't get me until like 7:45. And I was just kind of like, dude, the bureaucracy and the crap. Like I'm telling this guy like, hey, I've already done this. All the paperwork stuff. Like I literally just need you to sign this. I promise I'm good. In 2 minutes, I'll be able to convince you that I'm good, like whatever. And it was like 3 minutes in and out. But it was just like the fact that I'm like, man, I had to redo all this stuff because people lost things. And then I'm being put on other people's timelines, and I'm like not able to move the needle forward. Typical military stuff. And I was like not excited about being back in uniform at all. So now I'm like, all right, well, we'll see what happens when I go back this time. But I'm kind of disenchanted, I think, at this point. So, which is a bummer, because I loved, like when I was doing real Marine Corps stuff, like I loved life in the military. Just not really getting to do that anymore.
I think go ahead, Dan, because I got something.
No, I think that disenchantment that you're talking about, even I think that, working on other people's timeline, and then people losing your stuff, and then, having to just kind of go through the normal, I guess, bureaucracies. I think that really weighs on a lot of people, even as far as, being overworked, knowing your value, right, in the workplace, obviously having that being reconfirmed through evaluations, and then, not being able to go on some of those other things because, hey, we don't want to lose you from the office. I think a lot of that definitely plays into the fact of a lot of people getting out, right? In your mind, right? Let's say, perfect world, what are some of the things that would possibly kind of change that a little bit? I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess I'm trying to speak to the service members that are thinking about getting out, right? Maybe they don't have that platform though, like, because you were already primed and ready to go, right? But they're in that situation. What are some of the things that they can do to kind of, I don't know, kind of prepare themselves to get out or prepare themselves for the long haul?
Yeah, I mean, if you're already sure you're getting out, right, I would say, well, for one, document everything you're going to document, like medically, right? So make sure you're doing your VA claim stuff and all your medical documentation, but take advantage of everything you can while you're in, right? So maximize that time while you're in, max out your TSP or contribute what you can. You've got your VA loan benefits, so learn about how to use it and learn about real estate, learn about house hacking, whatever. Go to school while you're in. If they'll let you, go to other military schools. If you're still debating whether you want to stay in the military or not, and you're just not happy at your unit, like, try to transfer units or try to, like, do a lat move, look at another job, right? There's a lot of opportunities out there. I mean, those are probably some of the biggest ones, but really it would be, I would say, like, make sure you have some savings, like a runway, and then have some idea what you want to do, what you're passionate about, what whatever. Because I mean, you can get out, you can go to use the GI Bill, and the GI Bill is super cool. So I had beers on Wednesday. It was Marine Corps birthday, and I was lucky enough that, like, 3 of the guys that I enlisted didn't hate me, so they, like, called me and asked if I wanted to grab beers, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So we go to beer, and one of the guys I hadn't seen since he went, I mean, I guess since, like, his boot camp leave, like, since he got back, right? So it'd been 5-6 years since I've run into him, and we're talking. And he's lived in Colorado for the last, like, 2 years. I'm like, why Colorado? And he was like, the GI Bill will pay for my housing, so I figured it'd be a cool place to go. And, like, literally just, like, it was like one of those, like, someone finally gets it. It's like, he was like, Colorado would be cool. Let me go to college in Colorado because I can, and the military will pay me to do it. And that was just super cool to me. And he's back here now and whatever, but he's like, yeah, me and my fiance went and lived in Colorado Springs for 2 years just because. I'm like, it's like, there's a lot of cool opportunities leaving the military as long as you use them. And even if you don't want to go to school, like, if you don't know what you're going to do, like, that's a great way to at least be able to make a living.
Right. And get to explore. Yeah. Explore why you try to figure it out. Because, to your point, if you don't have something lined up immediately following, you get stuck into that identity crisis kind of thing. Right. Yeah. And back to your point, that's where
a real thing still.
It is. Exactly. And I have the same issues. I mean, I've been out for over a year now, but I still feel like how you mentioned, you said, hey, military to millionaire. If I don't have my ties to the military, how can I truly speak to that platform? I go through that identity crisis every time, even though I've been deployed several fucking times. I've been in 11 years. I'm like, how the fuck can I talk to these guys in uniform? Right? It's a real thing. So having something like that lined up, regardless if it's college or a new job, it'll at least help with that mental transition as well. One thing I wanted to talk about, this is a little slight shift, but it has to do with the transition here. You mentioned the thrift savings plan again, and I told you in the beginning I was going to dig on you about this one because I'm curious. The thrift savings plan, we'll do a whole podcast about it, coming up here in the future. But primarily, you invested in it. And I know you're a big proponent on it. Why? Because it's in your book, The No BS Guide to Military Life, which is on my shelf, and it's on yours there. So you guys are listening, grab a copy. Perfect plug. But as you transition out, understanding that when you leave, you can no longer you're in the Guard, you're in the reserves. Okay, so what was your thought process though when you transitioned out about how to utilize that TSP? Did you intend to keep it in the TSP even if you leave the Guard? What was your thought process behind that?
Yeah, so here's my hope with the TSP. I will never touch it again, and in like 40 years, I'm gonna be like, oh, holy shit, look at all that money.
Do you still plan to contribute while you're in the Guard to the TSP?
Yeah, most likely.
Okay.
So I maxed it out this year. This was actually the first year I think I've ever officially maxed out my TSP. I totally screwed it up at the beginning of my service, like everyone else. And even still, I've got, I think at the beginning of this month, I think it was like 114 grand in the TSP. So it's probably I don't know, probably like 8 to 10% of my net worth. And it's going to keep growing. It's going to just keep doing its thing, right? But the reason I like the TSP is a couple different things. One, obviously, most of my wealth is real estate. And so as much as I like the whole moving it into a self-directed IRA thing and then being able to use that for real estate, like, well, I already buy a bunch of real estate, so I don't necessarily know that I need another reason or a way to buy real estate. Like, I think it's smart to have at least some diversification in the portfolio. It's also the most passive thing you could possibly invest in, right? People are like, oh, real estate passive, like, oh, it's an LP, it's passive. It's like, okay, but if you're going to compare, you're investing in a syndication as a limited partner, it's super passive, it's whatever. You still have to like look at the investment, know the team you're investing with, and then you have to go send a wire transfer, right? None of which are really hard. But if you compare that to pushing a button on the computer one time and it just automatically gets pulled out of your paycheck and you never touch it again, definitely more passive. So I love the fact that it just kind of does its thing. I also view the TSP as my like super duper emergency fund, where like if I royally screw something up, I can go pay 10% in penalties and pull out, at this point, like $95,000 and be like, okay, now we're going to fix it. So that's why I leave it there. Cause it's like, man, if I pulled that out right now, I would find somewhere to put it. And then I wouldn't have that massive safety net.
So let me ask you this then. So the thought process is a lot of people leave the military and they say, hey, I have this beautiful thing in the TSP, but why don't I roll it over to another retirement account? What's your thought process on why you are going to keep it in the TSP versus another account?
I mean, there's a couple different thoughts. The main one, I guess, would be most of the time when you roll, you get pinged with a bunch of fees, whether it's like the fee of moving or the fee of, depending on what account you move it into, the fees might be higher. So for me, like, while I am contributing to a civilian Roth IRA as well, and honestly, I need to do a little bit more research. I might end up in the SEP IRA and the whatever, like the self-employed. There's different versions. So like technically I could contribute more, not an expert on any of that yet, but the TSP, like, it's so low feed and so simple that I will at least keep it open no matter what I do, because even if I do all this Roth IRA stuff, 40 years down the road, I can roll it into the TSP and then I'm paying less in fees and it's just a simpler setup. I would rather have the TSP open as an option to roll things back into down the road than the alternative, because most of the other funds have unnecessary fees or there's a fee for moving it over. And like people think, okay, well, what if I get hit with a 5% fee? In my case, that'd be like $6,000 to roll it over. It's not the end of the world. I still have 108 in the account. I'm like, okay, yeah, but what's that $6,000 30 years from now? Right? Like, you just missed out on 40 grand in your TSP for what, moving it? Like, so a lot of people, I think, get sold on rolling it just to have everything in one place. But I don't know that okay, it might be a little simpler to have everything in one place, but it's not like having 100 houses that you have to manage and then being like, one apartment would be easier. Okay, yeah, but it's like, you don't have to do anything with either account. So it's not like it's really complicated. You're literally like, I don't know. So for me, it's like, really, it's just easy to leave it the hell alone. That's what I plan to do. And I'm sure there's all kinds of arguments for all these other things. I mean, I've definitely been pitched on taking it all out and rolling it in a whole life insurance and or self-directed IRAs or whatever. But I just kind of realized, like, everybody who's pitching me on this is going to get incentivized because they're going to make money off me moving it in. And if I leave it where it is, nobody gets paid, which means I'm not paying anyone, which means it's going to keep earning money and doing nothing. So I don't know. And over the last 12 months, I earned 44.29%.
Same thing that
person.
Ali said.
Yeah. So that's the second person that's earning like astronomical percentages on freaking the TSP and those type of investment vehicles. That's absolutely crazy, man. So I did have a question, unless you have another question about TSP, Mike.
No, I'm good, man. I really just wanted to touch on those.
I got a question about, like, so you got out, right? And it sounded like you deliberately moved to Missouri, not just because of your rental properties are there, but also because of maybe there's a little bit of geo arbitrage there. Like, it's a little lower cost of living. Can you talk to us about that? Like, how you made the decision and how maybe other people should think about as they transition out, where they're going to move to. Because I know a lot of people will say, hey, I'm getting out. I want to go, sometimes it's not based on jobs. Sometimes it's like, hey, I want to go live on the coast, right? And as you know, the coast is a lot more expensive, right? So can you talk to us a little bit about how you came up with that deliberate decision to move where you moved, and how others should, so a few other things that other people should probably think about as well?
Yeah, full disclosure, my wife cracked a whip and said we're going back home, and that's what actually happened. And
That's
then
the reality.
yeah. So, but the logical justifications and the logical reasonings behind this are really twofold. One, as much as it is very possible to invest in real estate long distance, there are a ton of benefits to being where you're investing, right? It's a lot simpler. So now that I've mastered investing long distance, I really like being right where all my real estate is and being like, yeah, I'm going to go to that appointment. Oh yeah, I'm going to go walk this with a contractor. Hey, I'm going to go make sure this was done right myself. Or now I've hired an acquisitions manager who is doing most of that anyway. So I still outsource it, but it's easier to build those relationships when you're there, right? With professionals. So I think there's a benefit to that. However, I am a huge fan of Geo Arbitrage. I piss people off online all the time talking about this because they're like, well, that doesn't work in my market. Well, move. Who said you have to live in San Francisco? Fuck that. Go somewhere else. Like, I have two friends, not just one, two different friends who have moved at some point for extended amounts of time to Colombia because it was so cheap. Like, one of my buddies was like, dude, I'm living like a king for like $30,000 a year. And so here's what I would say is, if you're going to move somewhere like San Francisco or Denver, which I love Denver, or San Diego or Hawaii, which I love, or whatever, you need to move there with some kind of an occupation that pays you well enough that you're living there and you're still able to save money to invest. And if you're like me, where most of your income is either like cash flow producing assets, online revenue, like it's not tied to where you live. It's not a cost of living thing. It's literally just, I make the same amount of money no matter where I live. Then it makes infinitely more sense to move somewhere where the average median income is like $44,000 a year, as opposed to like $95,000 a year, because that means I'm saving, $41,000 a year while making the exact same amount of money. And that $41,000 is 2 more properties I can buy, or in my case, with my normal down payments, it could be 5 or 10 more properties that I could buy, because I've got some pretty crazy, unique, creative strategies I'm messing with right now. But or that's $30,000-$40,000 I can put in a brokerage account, or it's $40,000 I can buy a fucking Ferrari with. Like, it's whatever, right? So I'm a huge fan of the idea that, like, if your income is not tied to where you live, then move somewhere cheaper and build that wealth up, and then you can afford to go, wherever. Visit, like, right? Yeah, or exactly. even 5 years. Like, let's just paint the picture where if you saved $40,000 into a brokerage account for 5 years, $200,000, right? And that doubles. So let's say you're 30. So it's going to double 3 times before you turn 60, right? So great. So that's $1.6 million, right? So even at a 4% rule, that's paying you like $65,000, $70,000 a year when you hit retirement, right? So if you do that up front, and then you're like, I want to go live in Maui, and now I go live somewhere that's more expensive and I'm not saving as much, you're still going to have that nest egg. Like, it's much more powerful to sacrifice and invest at an early age than it is to do it on the back end. So there's like 2 schools of thought. There's like well, I want to enjoy my life while I'm young. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Do that, but do it in a way that you can still save and invest, or sacrifice for 5 or 10 years and then live however the fuck you want, because you did that. And now you're like, well, I'm 35. Sure, I'm not 25, but I'm 35 and I have like a fucking yacht. So it's like, you got to take what you want, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too.
And I love that, because what's so important is that people, they always put the cart before the horse. They're saying, well, shit, I just bought this rental property, so therefore I'm making whatever, $500 a month. That's enough to pay for the monthly lease of that Ferrari or that yacht or whatever. It's like, yo, calm down. There was a guy who mentioned to me, I don't remember who it was or whatever, but he was like, hey, don't sacrifice enjoyment of life. Don't sacrifice the enjoyment of life for the struggle. But enjoyment of life can be simply going out to dinner, right? It can be simply paying for that Netflix subscription or Disney Plus. the enjoyment of life does not have to be all expenses paid to Mykonos or whatever, like for 2 months. Like, chill, have it within moderation. But I think that's a really great point that people don't really conceptualize when they're starting that journey.
And on that note, I would say that paying for experiences is much more valuable than paying for most of the stuff people put their money into, right? Like I paid $1,000 to fly a plane in San Diego where like you get in the front seat, the guy behind you is driving and he does a backflip in the plane. And then he's like, all right, you got the controls. And then you do a backflip in the plane. And it was like I got sick. It was gnarly. We pulled like 6 G's and I almost passed out, but it was like, that's $1,000 well spent. Like I will always remember that. I got video footage of me like, trying not to black out in the plane. And I think
y'all want to see that video, go to, he's got it on his YouTube channel. If y'all want to see that fucking video. I'd be too afraid to do it because I'd fuck around and push the eject button or something as I'm passing out. So it's not my cup of tea.
Oh man. But like, spending money on something like that is different than being like, I want Netflix or I want to just live in San Diego. Like, well, what's the fun of living in San Diego if you don't actually get to experience San Diego? What's
the enjoyment of owning like a $10,000 watch when nobody fucking sees it? like enjoy your life. I agree.
Yeah, one thing I really love about your story and just the way that you've managed your real estate portfolio and just I guess it seems like your life and your strategy. It seems like you had a deliberate plan for it, right? And then you started to execute it. But I think your story is extremely relatable to really even just the average person. I mean, think about it. You were enlisted, right? You have a family. It's not like it's just you out there just going at it alone. You have a family and you're still able to crush your goals and provide for your family and essentially do what most people would say is, hey, this is the end goal for me. This is what I want to do in life. Right. And it seems like you're there, or you're very close to it at least. Right. So, I mean, talking to individuals that are like, I have an excuse. Like there's no way I can do it. There's no way I can do this. There's no way I can do that. Like, what do you say to those people?
Not with that attitude.
True.
I mean, yeah, I had a negative net worth and I was an E5 in the Marine Corps on recruiting duty. So I had no time, I had no money, and I got started. And then it took me like almost 2 years between that first duplex purchase. Actually, no. Yeah, it was almost 2 years between that first duplex purchase and my second, like I bought a 10 unit next, but it was my next investment. It wasn't like this, like, oh, he has money, you can just buy properties. And no, it took forever to save up for that next investment. And I wouldn't have been able to do it if I hadn't negotiated like seller financing into the deal. It just takes effort, right? And what you focus on is what you're going to be good at. So if you say, well, I can't do this, so I'm going to play Call of Duty all weekend. Like, all right, well, you're going to be good at Call of Duty. How's that going to work for you when you're 60?
He's going to be cold on Call of Duty at 60.
You can do both. There's nothing wrong with like, I played Mass Effect on last week for like 2 hours sitting on the couch because I was like, I just need a break. I just need to do something pointless for a little while. And I just literally played a video game for like 2 hours and was like, yeah, this is great. But I'm also at a point where like, I'm going to go to Dallas Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. And I could care less. Like I didn't have to think about going to Dallas. Somebody was like, hey, you want to come down to Dallas? I was like, yeah, all right, I'll be here. Whatever.
I love this because this is the culmination story of your journey throughout the whole thing, and understanding that during all of those ups and downs that you had within your career of, people telling you what you can and can't do, I'm sure you had struggles within the family, you had struggles within the businesses for sure. And you still were able to build a platform of collectively a little over 150 people, real estate holdings over 102 doors. And you never, ever, ever decided to make an excuse along the way. But the part that I loved the most was that it was a little Easter egg. You said, hey, you spent 2 hours the other day playing a video game. The point is you found ways to relax, during that time. I got a question for you because I struggle with this personally. If I take 2 hours off to do anything, I feel like a piece of shit. Do you ever go through those mental battles where you're like, I should be doing this? Or have you at least acknowledged the fact that, yeah, you need some rest too?
All the time. So I've got a couple different, I don't know if they're videos or I've talked about this a few times. I got so burnt out like 2 years ago that I wasn't like able to function. So like it was like a Saturday and I'm like, I have all these things to do. And I would realize I got like none of them done because I had no energy to focus on anything. So then I'm like, well, I need a break. So I'm going to go watch a movie. And the whole time I'm in the movie theater, I'm like, God, I should be doing all those things that I tried to do all day and I didn't get them done. And then I get home and I'm like, okay, I need to work on this. And then it was just this like revolving cycle for like 3 weeks. And the way that I was able to beat it was by finally like convincing myself that burnout will fuck you harder than not getting something done. And the only way to get around burnout is to tell yourself like, hey, for 2 hours on this day, like put it on your calendar and in your journal and be like, my job is relaxing, or my job is, for me, it was like reading a book in the sun by the pool or going to watch a movie or going to rent and jet ski or whatever that was. It was like every weekend I need to give myself like 1 or 2 hours where it's like, hey, my job for this 2 hours is to turn off the phone, turn off the work, whatever, because if I don't do this, I will be less effective in everything else. But you have to like give yourself permission to like understand. It can't be, okay, I'm worn out, I need to go take a break, because at that point, the whole time you're on your break, you're not gonna be able to enjoy it. It has to be like an intentional, hey, at this time, I'm gonna go get a massage, because if I don't get a massage, then I'm going to continue to overwork and I'm going to just like my productivity levels will go down. Because what happens is you get to a point where you're like, I just spent 5 hours working and I accomplished nothing. And then you feel like an asshole because you need a break. And then like, it's this bad cycle. And it happens to all of us. In fact, I made a post on Instagram the other day that said entrepreneurship is 1.5 days a week of feeling like you crushed it. 1.5 days a week of feeling like you didn't accomplish anything, you're super overwhelmed, and oh my God, the sky is falling. And like 2 days a week of sitting around with your thumb up your butt going, I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but what am I supposed to be doing? I'm like, And so I try to find time and ways to like, it's easier said than done. Like, but I think one of the other things is finding friends who struggle with the same things. Like I have a buddy, we're partners on the hotel we own. He's financially free as well. And like, was it last week? He and I were texting and I was like, dude, I'm hitting that wall again. Like, let's just hang out. And like, literally he came over to my office and it's like 9 a.m. and he and I we went through 2 pots of coffee, but we basically made Irish coffee. I had Bailey's and we just drank Bailey's and coffee for like 3 hours and just talked about nothing, just bullshitted. And we were in the office, we were hanging out. Like if there was work stuff, my assistant, my acquisitions guy were still able to come in and bullshit with us, just sitting on the couch, getting drunk and drinking coffee in the morning on a Wednesday, like, woohoo. And then like that afternoon, I was actually really productive because I was like, whatever. But, so yeah, it's crazy. Cause I won't say I would consider myself, a lot of people would probably consider myself to be like one of the more productive people they know just because of how much crap I put out on the internet. But there's definitely times where it's like, nope, I got nothing. Like I have to do this for, like I'm kind of at a wall right now and I'm trying to figure out what that's going to be this afternoon. Like we're going to go shopping later, but I need to find a way to relax today. And I don't know what that is yet, but if nothing else, I'll jump on the 4-wheeler and go rip through the backyard. So.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important because everybody who's go-getters, right? Primarily our audience between both of the platforms is everybody is trying to do more, whether it's in the military, whether it's with their family, whether it's in real estate investing. And I really appreciate you being honest about that because a lot of people will see somebody in the limelight, right? In the light of success and think that it's all easy, all frivels and giggles and glitter. And no, the truth is it fucking sucks. And, there's times where you do need to just sit back and relax. And it's very hard to tell yourself that, because I go through it all the time. It's like, Mike, chill, man. It's like, it's okay.
And this isn't like just something you and I have in common. This is like everybody. Like my roommate in Cali was a, reconnaissance scout sniper, Billy badass, Energizer bunny, whatever. But God forbid I woke that dude up in the morning before he wanted to wake up, right? Because if he didn't get his 8 hours of beauty sleep, like he was dead the whole fucking day. It was actually quite funny to me because I would occasionally be like, I'm gonna wake you up tomorrow morning when I wake up just to ruin your day. And like, so like there are like everybody's got that thing, man. And I don't care if you're Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, or freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like if you don't find a way to like decompress and relax, like you will end up killing yourself.
Yeah, it's quite honest, man. So let's talk about real quick, because this is one of your platforms that we haven't really brought up too much on here, is you mentioned about having like-minded individuals in your circle that helps you kind of elevate. So if people don't know, you have a mastermind group called the War Room. Would you mind explaining a little bit more about what that platform is?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't share this nearly enough. In fact, I wrote an email about it today and sent it out to my email list because I was like, I don't ever talk about this. And the War Room's been around for 2 years now. And apparently that was the first time I've ever talked about it in an email or at least written an email specifically about it. So I was like, oh man, I need to, it's just what you said. It's a mastermind group. It's only open to service members and veterans, and we talk real estate. So what we do is we split people into groups of like 4 to 6 for like a small group that meets every week. Usually it's broken up primarily by time zone, just because a lot of people in the group are still active duty. So time zones are difficult. And they do accountability groups. They talk about your goals, what your most important next step is to achieve that goal, what your struggles are. They do like a hot seat where they, one person talks about all their problems for like 30 minutes and people bring solutions and they brainstorm. And then you go back and talk about your commitment for what you're going to do next week. And then we have every Saturday morning, which is like the only time that seems to work for most of the people in the group. Cause we got people, literally we've got dudes in Europe and we got people in Japan and Hawaii and, everywhere. On the Saturdays, we have like the first Saturday of the week or month, we bring in like a guest speaker. So we've had, some of the more known people, we've had like Ryan Dossey, we've had David Osborne, we've had Tyler Austin, REI Sift was there last week. And then the second and fourth Saturdays, we're about to change it up to where they're going to be 4 different groups that you can jump in a call. So it's either like buy and hold residential, short-term rental, multifamily, or like wholesaling and flipping. So you can pick one of those and jump in and just talk about your niche. And then the third Saturday is like a member presentation. So today's was about like adding value to like small multifamilies in expensive markets to be able to sell them. Next one is going to be on multifamily, like investing in as a GP. And then the one after that is investing as an LP. And then so different presentations from people who are like subject matter experts about that. And really what it is just a community of service members and vets investing in real estate, right? So if you got a question, a problem, an issue, like one, we all relate because we're all service members. And 2, there's a wealth of information in there. We've got everything from E3 to an 06 in the group. And nice. Stu's an 05, 04, 05 in the Navy. Is he a 5? I don't ever remember.
He's 05, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember how their structure always whatever. And then yeah, I'm a grungy old E6 in the Marine Corps. So yeah, that's the long and short, just a community.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up as well. I was definitely going to give you guys kudos for creating that. You and Stu. Stu's been on the show as well. So if you guys want to hear his story, you can go back on one of our past episodes as well. But I'm a member of the War Room. I just joined it, maybe 3 weeks ago? It was like right after 2-3 weeks ago, right after Flip Hacking Live. And I will say, man, like everybody in that group is absolutely awesome, man. Like the amount of value that you've got. I've only been to because I've only been in 2 weeks, I've only been to the 2 like little small groups, how it's broken out into teams, and like you actually already form relationships with those people in that small teams. There's only like 5 or 6 of you in a group, so you really get to connect with other actual investors that also share those same experiences with you because you're both military, right? So it's really, really beneficial. I would advise every service member that is listening to this to definitely go at least check it out. And it's very inexpensive. And I think that was deliberately done so that even the younger service members can get in and kind of learn. So I think it's I would definitely recommend it, and I definitely give kudos to you and Stu for creating that. I think it's a great platform.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and a lot of our guests are actually members of the War Room. So yeah. I'm telling you, it is some quality members there. For sure.
Johnny Lynham, Marcus Long, obviously Dave Prey, Stu Grazier, myself, who
Yeah,
we got a
Adam,
couple more. We got a couple more that's coming on as well. But
If you haven't had Adam Whitney yet, you got to have
yep,
him on the show.
we've had Adam. We've
Yep,
had him
Adam on twice.
Yep, forgot about Adam.
He's awesome.
So yeah, man, like it's a really great thing to see, even to be a part of, but also just to see other service members networking and really, really helping each other out. And that's kind of why we started the platform, and we give you guys shout outs, Military to Millionaire, all the time. Same thing with ADPI, man. It's really awesome, man. It's relatively a small community, man. Like it really is. So if you listen to this and you're like, yeah, I've listened to the podcast enough, and I'm ready to take the next step, and you should definitely, that's definitely a something that I would definitely recommend for you to go check out next, to get some real world application.
Well, I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you forcing me to plug something that I should probably.
You have to. Yeah, you have to, man. Because like Dan said, it's all really about just, making sure people know what's out there, what's aware, because we all been through it, guys. Everybody who's listening. That's the best part about this community and coming together. And you know what I really love is to see, like, the fact that we spoke, 2 years ago, whatever it was at GrowthCon, right? And now look at the progression.
I just talked about it today, in a 3-bed, 2-bath house.
Yes.
That we rented as an Airbnb for like 5 or 6 people, and there were like 11 of us.
There was like 15 people in there, and we were just bullshitting. And just to see the trajectory from then to now is insane. But that is the type of community that it really is. So we talk about it being small. It's small as shit, and it gets even smaller for the people who actually take an action, right? So if you guys want to be a part of that, this is what that is, right? Joining that platform there. Okay, man. So to be respectful of your time, you're dropping crazy nuggets, but if you had to give one piece of advice for somebody who's been struggling, and now I kind of want you to change it up because we've had you on now, I think twice before. So for this one here, let's do it one better. If you had one piece of advice for somebody who's already established themselves in the real estate game, but they're ready to take it to the next level, that level where they step away completely from that security of a 9-to-5 and take on this challenge full time, what's the one piece of advice you would give them?
Aside from have a DD? No.
Yeah.
And wrap it before you. No. All right. So safety brief. Okay. So that's a good one. And this is some stuff that I'm struggling with right now. And it's way easier to say out loud than it is to actually do. So I would say, one, get out of your own head, right? So everybody's got imposter syndrome or whatever. I can't do this. I can't do that. I've got this excuse. I've got that excuse. I'm in scale mode right now, and I'm struggling hardcore with it. And I'm having to find people to like drag me to the next step. So for example, 4 months ago, I hired an executive assistant. She's full-time. I'm paying her $15 an hour to sit in my office and do all this stuff for me. And I'm trying to figure out how to keep her busy because I'm not giving her enough work and whatever. But that helped me out a lot. And then I realized, okay, well, I need to hire an acquisitions manager because I can't go to all these house appointments and do all this marketing. So I hired an acquisitions manager. And then I was like, well, I'm not getting enough leads. My direct mail is awesome, but I want to step it up a bit. So Adam talked about cold callers, and I got on the phone with Adam and was like, what do I need to do? Great, let's do it. And so I've got my first cold caller starts Wednesday. My next one starts the following Monday. I've got 2 cold callers hired. So I would say you need to get to a place where you have enough income coming in and small enough expenses that you can afford to take on at least one person to help you get rid of the crap that you hate doing that's not worth being done. Like, I love my Facebook group, but approving Facebook group requests was not worth my time, right? I was letting them pile up. It was taking hours or 2, 3, 4 hours a week just to approve Facebook people. And I was like talking myself out of an assistant forever. And then I hired this assistant. Now she runs my entire, like, half my emails, all my referrals. She does my Facebook group. She does like all this stuff to the point where when I see something that I need to do, I'm like, oh, can I give this to Rachel? And so I think that advice would be get to a spot where you're like, all right, I can, if I take away my actual job, I'm making enough money that I can hire somebody to help me with the meaningless crap, and I can continue to invest, and then get out of your own way and take that step. It's scary, but once you have somebody who's running all that stuff for you, who's like the right personality to actually take stuff off your plate, it frees you up for much bigger opportunities. Like, I'm going to Dallas, like I said, for 3 days this week. I'm going to be gone 4 of 5 days next week because I'm going to Dallas Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then Friday, I'm driving like 3 hours to go look at some crazy property that we bought on a tax lien. And I'm going to be gone all day. and I'm going to be okay. I was gone for a whole month and my assistant kept everything running without me. And so I would not be able to do that if I hadn't. Yeah. So
Out of your own way.
I don't know if that's as formulated as well as it should, but like, if you're looking to go to that next step, you've got to figure out how to stop being the only person running the show.
It sounded like the first step to that was basically make sure you to figure out if you're actually at that step in the first place, to make sure you have enough income to then, pass off other tasks to people, and then sound like, all right, make the plan for what you want them to do, because that seems like what you did there, and then from there actually get out of your own way. Am I kind of synopsizing that the right way?
Yeah, pretty much. And then actually use that time to focus on bigger tasks, right? Yeah. Set time apart to focus on big ideas or next projects, or whatever those most valuable tasks are, and then do them.
Excellent.
I love it. Yeah, because like we just talked about, in as little as 2-3 years ago now, since the original interview, you were already in the game, but just seeing how much growth that happens for everybody who's starting and taking action, growth is going to compound so quickly that you're going to look up and be like, oh shit, I'm ready to hire somebody. Oh shit, I'm ready. So I really appreciate you breaking that down. And again, being transparent, saying like you're still struggling with it, because that's the truth of it all. That will be a constant struggle, because, let's say you make $100,000 in passive income. Great. The challenges here are going to be a lot different than when you're making $1 million in passive income, so forth and so on. So the challenge is always there. Yeah. All right. So now we got everybody is like, oh, I'm geeked out. I want to join the war room. I want to see the video of you doing 6 Gs with a backflip. Where can they find you?
Pretty much everywhere. If you type in From Military to Millionaire. So I'm on Instagram is my biggest platform, YouTube, Facebook. It's all either under From Military to Millionaire or Military Millionaire, and it'll pop up on Google, because I've finally got SEO to believe I exist.
It finally stuck in there.
Excellent, man. Hey, well, it's been an excellent conversation, man. I know this wasn't, if you guys are listening, this wasn't like the typical episode. It's just because, we've had David on a few other times, and we really want to just have that conversation about what it looks like for you now that you have transitioned, right? And I really appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us, and dropping that knowledge for us, and helping us, kind of navigate that. So really appreciate you coming on, man.
Anytime. This was fun for me, because I tell the entry level, like, buying houses part of the story a lot, but I don't always get to talk about the the struggle that is now, which is, and don't even get me started on like, okay, now you're out, what do you do to entertain yourself? There's some real struggles out there,
Where are they now? David Pere.
Yeah, if you're willing to come back on, man, I agree with you. We do want to cover the basic knowledge, because we're always trying to educate that next investor, that next veteran. But I think it's extremely important to have these conversations, because like we mentioned, it's people are reaching this level far faster than they realized, and they need that next insight, right? And all you got to do is be one chapter ahead of the book to be able to help somebody.
That's it. Yeah, happy to come back on anytime, guys.
Excellent. Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to leave us a comment, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, all those great things. If you're listening to these beautiful voices on the airwaves of podcast, go ahead and leave us a comment, leave us a review. We really appreciate those as well. Other than that, that's all I got. This is Dan Wynn.
And Mike Glaspie
signing off.